Boneshatter is a single, solitary, lonely island in the endless sea of sadness that is melee builds. But why is this one melee ability able to make it through and succeed as a League Start build when all others fall horrifically short? Let's talk about it. So I just wanted to quickly show you this character. We did some early solo self-found League Start testing. This is before patch notes when this video is being recorded, so do keep that in mind. If the build does survive patch notes, I will make a separate video and a better build guide about that. This is not a build guide, this is just some early testing so that I could get acquainted with Boneshatter. Now, we did a test going from, like I said, all the way from the start to getting both of these Watchstones here. I know you can't really see it because of my camera, but as you can see, Grasping Voidstone and Omniscient Voidstone. It took us about 13 hours and 59 minutes from start to end. I am not a racer, I'm not a speedrunner, I'm not really too focused on speed, and we kind of took it a little bit slow as I was figuring stuff out. I think that I could probably do quite a bit better on this time, but this is in SSF, which I'm not familiar with, and it is using the new strategy that you might have been aware of that I think Captain Lance made a video about it, using Wandering Path. Excellent strategy. I'll make a video about that later, but this is pretty powerful when it comes to early League Start. However, I do want to talk a little bit about Boneshatter. Now, what Boneshatter is, this is the map that I was just in that you saw in that preview, but I will show you in just a random area, I guess. So what Boneshatter is it is a melee strike ability that causes you to stack trauma. And the whole idea behind this is that as you stack this trauma, you cause more and more scaling, ramping physical damage to yourself, while also increasing the damage that you do. So the idea here is that when we do use Boneshatter, our entire goal is to prevent as much of this damage to ourselves as we possibly can. We do that through the Juggernaut. And as you can see up in the top left, we've got this little stack of trauma here. Now on a boss and such, I can get to about 20 to 30 stacks of trauma relatively comfortably and feel okay with that as long as I have, you know, some cooldowns and stuff going. But that's the whole idea of the build. We are focusing our entire build around being able to scale that trauma as much as possible while preventing all of the negatives of the damage. Now, how do we do that? So the Juggernaut in particular does have this one node, which is called Untiring. This is the main reason that you would go Juggernaut for Boneshatter as opposed to like Slayer or something like that. What Untiring does is 1.5% of physical damage prevented from hits in the past 10 seconds is regenerated as life per second. The thing that Boneshatter does to us, the self-damage, is a hit. We are hitting ourselves. On top of that, what that means is that we are able to use this node here, which is called Inexorable. It says 25% chance to gain an endurance charge when you are hit. We are hitting ourselves. So between those two nodes, and then we do have some like extra clear help down here, Attack Mastery giving us additional nearby enemies and such. Between all of these things, we are able to use Boneshatter on the Juggernaut. Now, why would you go Boneshatter in particular? The main reason is that it's pretty much one of the only strike skills that with very minimal gear has good clear, acceptable single target, and doesn't just kind of fall over. Pretty much all other melee abilities, for some reason, GGG is just kind of left in the dust. The main reason that Boneshatter works is because it does have this added physical attack damage, as you can see at the top line, on top of it having good base attack damage. And then on top of that, it's 3% more damage per trauma. That scales up to 4 once you fully max it out. And this is just significantly more damage than almost any other melee strike ability that is in the entirety of the game. So it is one of the only ones that actually scales pretty well. On top of that, you see that line that says Pulse has 15% increased area of effect per 0.1 second of stun duration up to 400%. The idea behind that is that there is an extra pulse of AoE that happens when you Boneshatter someone, when you attack someone, that causes it to do a larger AoE damage. That's why you saw in the preview video how I was able to clear entire packs pretty easily. Between that and our Ancestral Cry, which gives us 2 additional enemies that we're striking, on top of the 3rd additional enemy that we get from our Attack Mastery, and Tribal Fury giving us Splash, as well as Boneshatter having Splash in and of itself, makes for some pretty insane clear. You can get to the point where you are essentially clearing like most of the screen with one attack. Now, this character in particular is not ideal in any way. We'll talk more about that in the POB in a little bit. This is solo self-found, and unfortunately in solo self-found, you kind of just have to go with what you find. So we're not going to talk about any of the specifics of this character just yet, but the main idea is that we are preventing as much fizz damage as we can through armor, as well as just things that cause us to gain more armor, take less percentage fizz damage, and we are recovering as much as we can through like recoup as well as regeneration, like that node from the Juggernaut, life leech also. All of those things combined make it so that we are able to scale as much trauma as we possibly can, stand still, and just beat the boss's face in until they fall over, hopefully before we do. Now let's jump over into PoB so I can get into some more specifics, and I can talk about if you want to attempt to practice league starting this build, do keep in mind this is not a league start guide. This is just a early practice run, and I'm giving you guys all the information that I figured out if you're interested in planning this for yourself. So I do want to mention that in my YouTube channel, in the playlist section, you will find a playlist of my live streams. You might have noticed that I have been live streaming on YouTube, so if you're interested in anything that happened with that character's whole run through, you can go check out those live streams, go to whichever one you want, and find you know, if you want to watch me suffer against Eater of Worlds since I had like a 350 PDPS axe, you know, just solo self-found early league kind of things. However, I want to talk a little bit about this POB. This is not a league start guide. This is not a league start POB. It's a very, very basic POB with very limited information and such in it. However, it should be sufficient for you to test out a league start of Boneshatter for yourself if you want to see if this is something that you'd like to play. Now, I have put in all of the leveling stuff here. We've got like Acts 1 through 10, white maps, yellow maps, red maps, and then 3 different in-game versions. So the idea here early on is that we are going to start going out the melee damage here as well as some life. This build does need a pretty decent amount of accuracy early on, so we're going to be early on grabbing as much of that accuracy as we can. We do get these nodes. These do increase stun duration, and they're just some good melee nodes for early on for two-hand, and it does give us a little bit of extra damage, which we could need. And then we do take this one leech node here. If you need a little bit of leech, if you feel like you're dying, you can take this. If not, just skip it, because we are going to be heading towards this accuracy. This should be enough accuracy for most of the rest of the game. However, we will swap these nodes over to these ones a little bit later on. Now, beyond that, we are going to move down this way. We're grabbing Call to Arms. Early on, you'll be using Sunder, so you'll be using Seismic Cry with Call to Arms. However, you'll swap that over to Ancestral Cry whenever you're ready to swap. But having an instant War Cry just feels really nice, and it's like 2 points. You can grab a little bit of life early on if you feel like you're dying. If you want to be a big softcore Andy, just skip all the life nodes and don't care about it. But we're heading down here towards these axe nodes. Now, the main reason that we're going towards these axe nodes first instead of heading towards the 40% more attack damage node over here, which most people are going to be like, yeah, I want the 40% more attack damage. More damage is better, right? Well, not necessarily early on in a league start scenario. What these nodes give us is it gives us chance to gain Onslaught on kill, which Onslaught is attack, cast, and movement speed, which is very important. This mastery also gives us Rage, which also gives us movement speed and attack speed. So between Rage as well as Onslaught, these nodes are insanely good for very early on for moving through the axe quickly. After that, we're going to be coming up here because we are going to be planning on moving towards Boneshatter as quickly as we can. So you'll notice that we grab this Tribal Fury node as well as the attack mastery. You kind of need this before you swap to Boneshatter so that you're making sure that your clear is good enough and you can hit enemies from a little bit further away. But as you can see, when we jump up to the next node here, we have grabbed Inexorable, and at this point you will have done the first lab, hopefully, and you will grab Untiring and you'll be able to swap to Boneshatter. After that, it's pretty straightforward. As you move through the axe, you're just going to be heading towards this more attack damage if your accuracy rating is higher than maximum life. Make sure you keep that accuracy up. You'll notice that we swap over these accuracy nodes to here, and then we kind of just fill stuff out. You'll notice we'll just fill in life, fill in damage, all kinds of good stuff as we get up to Act 10. And then as we jump into maps, we're going to be filling out some defenses as well as a few things that will give us, say, like some Impale. We move through here, we grab some aura stuff, we move into red maps, we'll grab some max resistance, and then we get into the in-game versions of the build. Now, there's 3 in-game versions of the build that I have included here. There's a more damage version, which I think is the one that you should probably be focused on for softcore testing. This is just going to be the one that has the most damage, as it is stated. 3.6 million with a Sinvicta's Metal Axe, Anu Ahi, a Magnate, Natural Affinity, and a bunch of just random armor rares, right? These are the lowest tier Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds mods. These are the ones you're going for. You don't exactly have to have these. I don't have pretty much any of these on the build that I was playing in SSF, and I still managed to kill them. But this is some very basic gear, okay? 3.6 million DPS. That is with 15 stacks of trauma, which you could probably get up to 20, maybe 25 if things are really going well. And of course, this is going to be on Guardian Pinnacle bosses. Now, notably, brutality, we do have this line here that says Axe Mastery 5% more damage. That is going to be from this right here. This is 10% more damage with hits and ailments against enemies that are on low life. Low life is 50% or lower, so it equals out to about 5% more damage. Because this node, as you might notice here, doesn't actually do anything when you put it in, because the enemy would have to be on low life, which is somewhere in here. However, this is the damage version. Now, there is a version that has a little bit more life to it. You'll notice that it does have, let's see here, 500 additional life, some more life regen. However, it loses 500,000 DPS. Basically what happens here is we just remove a couple DPS nodes and we do change over to these life nodes and these life nodes. If you feel like you're dying a little bit too much and you want a little bit more life, a little bit more tankiness, a little bit more effective health pool, you can do this. And then the very last version is going to be a spell suppression version of the tree. This is going to be very similar to Garotha's. You might notice that there also is a set of gear for spell suppression in here. So this version of the build is going to be relatively similar to Garotha's. It's not exactly the same because he uses a different amulet that gives him like some extra suppress as well as some accuracy and stuff like that. I don't use that amulet in this version of the build, but it does quite a bit less damage, as you'll notice here, 2.3 million, but it does have a 100% chance to suppress spell damage. A little bit tankier, definitely a lot tankier on bosses. I personally don't think you really need to do this on softcore. Just be okay with dying occasionally in softcore. I already feel like the build kind of suffers in damage without investing a lot of gear, so for me it's kind of hard to suggest going this version of the build in softcore, but in hardcore this is almost assuredly what you would do. That's going to be pretty much it for the trees. Now when it comes to the item sets, this is very basic gear. There is a very basic budget axe that you'll see in here that's a little bit better. If you're interested in how to craft a big fizz axe, I have a two-handed sword guide that's over on the channel if you want to go check that out. Very similar, just ignore the crit portion of it. You're going to want to try to get like double damage instead of crit on that axe. You essentially are just going to be getting like some kind of fractured axe, like a percent fizz fractured axe, hitting it with essences of contempt and then multi-modding the suffixes. That's essentially all that you really need to do. Go for as big of an axe as you can. If you can get like a 650, 700 DPS axe, you'll probably be able to do most content in the game. Not Ubers, of course. You're going to need way more gear for Ubers, but you'll be able to do pretty much all the way up through Eater and Exarch pretty comfortably. Now when it comes to the skills, I have put a set of leveling skills in here, but this is literally just showing you like the main links and the fact that you should be using Seismic Cry early. This is pretty basic stuff. There's nothing crazy in here. In the actual Boneshatter links, you'll notice we've got Boneshatter, Ruthless, Impale, Fortify, Brutality, and Close Combat. Now, these are in order, of course, in like how important they are. The interesting thing about Impale is that when you look at the amount of damage that everything does, you might be noticing that Melee Fizz is not in here. Melee Fizz is technically better than Fortify when it comes to damage. However, I did try to do a bunch of testing with taking these Fortify nodes as well as the Mastery that causes you to be able to Fortify. And at the end of the day, it is actually just better to use the Fortify link. However, not very many people use Impale, and the Impale link is actually just more damage than Melee Fizz, by a pretty decent amount too. Make sure to keep track of your chance to Impale. If you don't take these nodes, you'll need the Impale chance on like Glove Implicit, which means you're not going to be able to use Tanu Ahi. You'll need like maybe some jewels, or you can swap to Dread Banner, but then watch your accuracy. So that's what I would say there. Beyond that, Close Combat is actually pretty powerful for clearing, but it is going to be worse in general than having Fortify and Brutality. Brutality is going to make it so that you can do Ellie Reflect maps without having to worry about it, but you could swap these two. There's honestly not too much difference here. Close Combat's going to make it so that you jump around a lot faster. For reference, my solo self-found character that I had was on a 4-link, so yeah. No, of course, it wouldn't be a melee build without a bunch of totems, right? Ancestral Protector, Vol Ancestral War Chief, Culling Strike, multi-totems, put one down, put the other one down, pretty much any time that you're fighting something big. For our auras, we're using Determination, War Banner, and Pride. Now, I am using Flesh and Stone and Blood and Sand on my SSF character. However, I think that Pride would be better, but I was just using those because it was like too much brain work to be able to figure it out. I figured it out later in POB. Berserk, you're just going to use this as like a final button to press right before you fight a map boss. This is just going to be, you know, some extra power. You can also use this on bosses. If you are fighting a boss and you do get up to like 30-40 rage, just use the Berserk because they're probably going to go invulnerable for a little bit anyways, and you're not going to be able to do anything. For movement, we do use Leap Slam with faster attacks. If you have an extra slot, you can put Frostblink in here. Frostblink is just good for moving around on bosses. Blood Rage, obviously, this is going to help us generate Frenzy charges and give us some leech as well as some attack speed. Ancestral Cry is the cry that works for us. Armor, additional melee strike range. It gives us additional enemies hit when we are exerting our attacks. And we do use a cast 1 damage taken here. You can do this differently if you want, but I do have cast 1 damage taken on Warlord's Mark or Vulnerability. Warlord's Mark is good because it's going to give you a bunch of rage, give you a bunch of leech. I would say on big bosses, you're probably better off going Vulnerability, but Warlord's Mark most of the time while clearing, just so you can spam Berserk as you run around. Molten Shell is still the best. There's no other guard skill that's as good. We have like, I don't know, how much armor? 87,000 armor when we're standing still. So yeah, we get max effect of Molten Shell. And then we do have this link here, which is Vengeance. This is going to auto proc 30% of the time when we're hit. And do remember that Boneshatter is a hit when we hit ourselves. So we're hitting both the enemy and we're hitting ourselves. So we have a 30% chance every single time that we hit to proc this Vengeance, which is going to proc Rage, give us a little bit of extra rage on melee hit, and then also give us Maim, which is 10% increased physical damage. That's pretty much it. There's a couple notes in here for some random stuff. As I showed off the items, there's nothing really crazy in here. It is just Tanuahi for Adrenaline Onslaught, Sinvicta's Aura Crafted Axe, the Magnate. This is probably the hardest thing to get actually out of all the gear here, and then just some random stuff. If you are worried about resistances, since there's nothing on here, you just need to get them on your gear. You can get them on the tree, you can get them on your gear, you can get them on pretty much anything. The resistances are factored in here because I don't know where you're going to be getting your resistances from. It does fit. I've done it myself. I know that there's enough room. You're just going to have to find them. And that is going to be it for the video. Remember, this is not a build guide, but Boneshatter did end up being pretty good. It is the melee ability that works for League Start as of right now. Hopefully the patch notes don't annihilate it. If they don't, I'll put a full build guide out for it. Make sure to look forward to that later on. I think it is going to be this Thursday that we're getting the patch notes. And then after that, I'll probably put a build guide as soon as I'm ready, as long as the patch notes don't annihilate Boneshatter. So look forward to that. I'm going to be testing a bunch of other League Start builds, so make sure that you do subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can see those live streams as they happen. And remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.